Podcasting's choice. From coast to coast, continent to continent, right here 24/7.
PMR.
Another world, another time, in the age of wonder. 1,000 years ago, this land was green and good, until the crystal cracked, for a single piece was lost, a shard of the crystal. Then strife began, and two new races appeared, the cruel Skeksis, the gentle mystics.
Cavebabble. Hello and welcome to Cavebabble episode 265. This week's episode, The Dark Crystal. This episode is brought to you by The Shard, of course. Hello everyone, this is Eric.
This is Valerie.
And this is Courtney.
Oh, what was that again?
This is Courtney.
Okay,
Yay!
hey, it came through that time.
Oh, I thought it killed. Okay, yeah. Yay!
Oh no.
Courtney is back, look.
Yay!
She exists.
Welcome, Courtney.
I do. What is going on?
She exists on via Skype on very sketchy internet. So what we're going to do...
Oh, very sketchy internet.
No, very Skeksis internet, because it did it right there.
Very
and
sketchy internet.
And while you were saying that, it went out. So I am going to add it there. You know I am. We've decided that, there's a character in this film that we are now going to associate with Courtney. And every time Courtney's voice goes out, you're going to hear this. There you go. You're going to hear that. Enjoy that, everybody.
Hopefully you won't hear a lot of
time. Oh, I bet you're going to get real annoyed.
Courtney's joining us for this episode because this is a classic from my childhood and also Courtney's childhood. Aww. And Amber's childhood. Okay, everybody's childhood. So,
but we would spam this movie all the time.
I remember, guys.
You would do what, Courtney?
Spank this up.
Mom heard me.
Jeez.
Mom filled in the blanks is what she did.
Maybe. Spam.
No, we were watching the new Dark Crystal series. Well, Valerie and I just finished it up. And so we thought it was the perfect time to revisit the original. And so that's what we're doing. And of course, if we're going to do that, we have to have you join us. So
Exactly.
Heck yeah.
Heck yeah. Is this
the series next weekend or the weekend after or the weekend after that?
When we next record, we're going to cover that one.
There you go.
There you go. When
we next you have to wait for long. You have to wait till I can actually watch it too, so I can join for that.
Oh, okay. So it may be 5 shows from now, but we'll get to it.
Yeah.
We promise that we will get to it.
Nah, I'll watch it sooner.
Court being a single woman has a packed social life.
As a single woman.
You're a single.
All the single ladies.
Hey, Courtney.
As a single woman.
What do you think of this movie?
As a single woman, I've always loved it.
You were single back then, but you weren't a woman.
I mean, I probably thought I was.
Yeah, you probably did. All right.
I mean, tell the story before we kick off on this. I do have to tell a funny story for it, and I think the listeners will appreciate it too. So.
Oh wait! I need a funny story intro. Yeah. I don't have one. Go ahead.
So Amber and Kevin and Caius were going shopping, and as they were walking into the shopping store, Caius and his famous euphemisms say, I just don't know what's going on.
Uh-huh.
And then Amber says, "Oh, that's okay, honey. Most of us don't." And then, and then they take a few steps further, and he says, "I just don't know what's going on. I just don't know what's going on." And she says, "Don't worry. In about 10 years, you'll think you know everything." And she said that she hears this chuckle from a guy walking behind them. Because he got it. 10 years, he'll be 14 years old, and they
Right.
think they know everything.
Yeah.
So she said it made her day that she made somebody else's day.
That's all.
So there's my funny story of the day.
So, Courtney, as a single woman, what do you think of that story?
As a single woman, I'm like, yeah, I could wait a while for some kids.
Whenever you think you want a kid, go visit your sister.
Right. So actually, what I found is anytime that I think I might want a kid or a dog or a cat, I buy a plant.
Yeah.
Oh, that's perfect solution. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Well, those
Yep.
things are practically
It's like-
equal, right? I mean,
Right. Exactly. Just they're less noisy.
Yeah, and on a positive note, they don't poop and pee all over your house, and they don't talk back.
Not if you have what I have, which is a fungus gnat infestation.
oh gosh, that
Trying to get a
sounds...
hold of him.
Yeah, they're all over the place.
So if any of our listeners have any suggestions on how to get rid of a fungus gnat infestation,
Actually, I've already started that. It's neem oil.
memes. So from Facebook memes, you squeeze.
No,
it.
neem.
Oh,
Oh yes, it's meme oil. You have to smash them all up.
Neem oil.
You start with the history of dance.
It's meme oil. You have to have a hint of good doggo.
well, you'll have to update on us on that. See if it tell us if it works.
Meme oil.
Yeah,
Get it?
Definitely.
Okay.
It did.
Let's get into it. Here we go. I'm going to introduce it here. If I were a single woman, what would we talk about? What are we discussing? 1982's The Dark Crystal.
It begins as a quest.
You must find the shard. The crystal shard.
The crystal shard?
To save our world guiltily.
A wonder-filled fantasy adventure. Enter the world of the Dark Crystal.
On another planet in the distant past, a gelfling embarks on a quest to find the missing shard of a magical crystal and so restore order to his world. Directed by Jim Henson and Frank Oz. Never heard of him.
True.
No, yes we have. Of course we have.
Dead and soon dead.
Oh, wow. Wow, way to go.
Way to go.
Spoiler alert on the Muppets, they're dead.
Not the Muppets.
I
The
know.
creator of.
Yeah, I know.
Everybody knows that. We all mourned in 1990 when Jim Henson passed.
I mourned. I wasn't here yet.
In 1990, that's true.
Frank Oz is now 75 years old. Did you know that?
No, but now we do.
He was born. That's usually what Valerie says.
Was
he
he
was
really?
born.
Come on.
Okay, so after the goofiness of the Muppets and everything, then came this film. This is a totally different tone, isn't it?
Oh, yeah,
This-
massively.
This movie's semi-creepy, isn't it?
Did you know
No.
that Jim Henson planned this movie this way? He wanted it to get back to the darkness of what he considered the original Brother Grimm fairy tales. He thought that children liked the idea of being scared and that it was a healthy emotion for them.
As a single woman, do you agree with that, Courtney?
I mean, depends.
Did you as a child like to be scared?
As a child? No.
Yeah.
As a teenager? Sure.
Sure. Let's start with what is your experience with this film, Courtney?
Mine
Yeah.
So I don't have anything pulled up. So like no internet, no nothing. So sadly, I'm going to botch character names and stuff
Oh, no, that's okay. Don't worry about it.
because I sadly cannot remember the name of our main character.
Jen.
Jen. Thank you.
With an N.
I was like, oh
and-
God. So I remember this was around the time we were watching this around the same time as we were watching Gate to the Mind's Eye and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I also remember watching The Black Cauldron, which is totally different.
Yeah, it is.
And so a lot of the time I would mix them up.
In classic kid fashion, yeah.
Yeah, so I was like, oh, we need to watch The Dark Crystal. And then I was like, wait, that's the one with like the two dragons and stuff, right? And I was like, wait, no, that's... And so I would mix them up all the time. And we had it... Didn't we have it on VHS?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All of this. So I would mix up their VHS tapes, and I would get upset if I found one over the other. And I'd be like, that's not what I remember.
That's not how this movie goes.
Right. I was like, this isn't the right one. And yet I could never figure out why it wasn't the right movie, because I was like, but it is.
I would just like to point out that this film and The Black Cauldron and the Mind's Eye movies, you had the coolest parents ever.
No kidding.
Oh my God.
On
Look at what
VHS.
we introduced you to.
And you can't stand Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah. Yeah, I really can't.
See?
To this day.
But I thought you liked Winnie the Pooh back then.
See, I did until what was it? It was the movie, until the movie where they get lost in the cave and stuff.
Yeah. I won't say how long ago that was at this point, but yeah, more recent movie. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Right. That both, it bothered me and terrified me, and I hated Winnie the Pooh ever since.
Oh,
See,
wow.
traumatizing, yeah.
This is like a therapy session for you.
Talking
No,
about the
but
movies
we're about to get into it. So, Dark Crystal. See, as a kid, I always had to I had little crushes on random people from movies and stuff. Jen was one of my crushes.
Oh my God.
I could
I
see
had a
that.
massive crush on Jen.
Yeah, I could see that. Uh-huh.
Why? He's the most confused main protagonist in any movie ever, I swear. He never knows what's going on. What is this? I don't understand. What's the shard for? Who are you?
But he still saved the
Who am
world.
I supposed to see?
But as a kid, you're like, I can relate.
Oh, see, no, I loved him as an early teenager when I saw this movie at the theater, I think a couple times. So I get where you're going. That's fine. So you had a crush
But
on
yeah, so
Jen.
I did. I had a crush on a puppet, so don't mind me.
Yeah.
I think it's
Great.
because, hey, it probably helped that the first time we're introduced to him, he's naked beside a stream playing
He
a
looks
flute.
like a freaking Ken doll. You can even see all of the little bends in his arms.
It reminds me of an art model in one of those little,
yeah,
right.
one of the fancy art models. Mhm.
Yeah, uh-huh.
Exactly.
Bend Jen in any way you wish and draw him.
Yeah, exactly. Or have him play his little flute. But like you, I forgot that narration was so long.
Another world. Another time.
That narrator who is...
They just go on forever.
Joseph O'Connor is the narrator. Oh, did you know what else he played? He played the combined beings at the end, the Urkskek. Yeah, I can say that. Yes, the Urskek at the end. Yeah, the combined creature, that was his voice at the end, too, which made me wonder,
Oh, really?
is the entire movie narrated by the combined being? Do, 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 do. He's telling the story.
It would make sense.
Yeah.
It would make sense.
So, yeah. Yeah.
I like that.
That went on for the first 2.5, 3 minutes of the movie is his voiceover. As a matter of fact, the Skeksis don't say nearly as much as I remember them saying. I've seen this movie so many times. And in the series that we just watched, they talk all the time. And in this one, there are all kinds of scenes where they're just shuffling around, not saying a thing. It's really strange. Anyway,
And
go
you're
ahead.
like, wait, what?
You would tell what? What?
So I remember this movie, it kind of started the whole, I guess, when I would create my own fantasy worlds and stuff. it kind of started the inspiration for that because there were so many things going on that weren't reality.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Because there's like so many plants, so many creatures, so many things that you haven't seen before, but they would totally, exist in this world. And I don't know, it was kind of one of those things where I'd be transported to a different place, and that's why I would watch it all the time.
I'm betting that as I'm thinking right now, I'm thinking that I bet this is a big inspiration, or was a big inspiration for your fascination with weird botanicals.
Probably. Hey. Yeah.
Oh, there are so many
probably
cool ones.
I wanted to be a botanist, and any time that there were like any sort of funky gardens, I'd be totally into it. And yeah, it probably was.
There's one scene in particular where they go across a whole bunch of things like that, and little critters too, and that big gulpy monster that, not monster.
Oh my God, my favorite.
The gulpy hillside that eats.
It's so cute.
Yeah, and all of those little things all around it going. Blah, 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 blah. It was
right.
Really cool.
I remember how influential this was. I remember going out into our forest in the backyard and making her gelfling noises at like birds and stuff, like expecting to like control them.
Yes, with your boyfriend Jen at your side.
Yeah, I'd be like croo, 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 at like random creatures.
I'm putting that noise in here right now.
Go for it.
Did you know?
No.
That in 1978, when Jim Henson and his daughter Cheryl were stuck at an airport, Kennedy Airport, was struck by a snowstorm, that's where they created most of the details of that movie world.
Really?
They wrote it out on sheets of hotel note paper.
Oh, that is so cool.
Isn't that? So,
that's awesome.
Just thought that'd be a good, that's when they created that world.
I just like how many times, I wish I had a counter of how many times someone said shard.
Oh, that's what I should have done. I should have gone and captured all of that. Instead, I went and captured all of the questions that Jen has. And I'm not done with it yet, but here, I'm going to give everyone a taste. I have to put it in the middle of the show because it's too good. Enjoy this little montage of things that Jen says.
What do I do with the shard?
You want to know what this is all about? Is that it, Gelfling? You don't know?
I don't understand. What am I doing here? What do I do with it? What is it? Am I supposed to take it somewhere? What's so special about this shard?
Jim, what's the shard for?
That's just it. I don't know. I found the shard.
But you don't know what to do with it.
What in the world? Which one is it? What does it mean? Where are we? Which one is it?
Questions. Too many questions.
Who is Ogre, anyway? I wish I'd never heard of this shard.
So questionable. So confusing.
What is this place? I don't understand.
What is this? Why am I here? Who's Olga?
Oh,
It's
a vegetable. That's not too bad.
See, I was just about to say, I always mixed up her name with okra. And, it actually, funny story, I would actually mix up her name with Oprah. And I would actually associate Ogra with Oprah.
Yeah.
Thinking that Oprah played that character, voice acted that character.
Yeah, exactly.
And
she probably could.
And Oprah's kind of that in charge type of person too. I could see that.
Right,
Personality wise, their voices.
She's very strong.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I can see that.
I can see that. Okay, I'm confused though. I know that's not surprising to either one of you, but I'm confused because Ogra is pronounced Agra half the time. And
she is, yeah.
And her name is Aughra. Every time you have an A and a U, we always pronounce that ah, like it's in audacity and audio and things like that. We don't say audio.
Yeah, an auger.
True. Yeah, and Jen, throughout this movie, as a matter of fact, in one part, he says it both ways in one sentence.
That's true.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he says Agra and then he says Ogra. So, she looks like an ogre, so that's why I just think Ogra. But,
right, exactly.
But it's
Ogra.
Which one is it? I think I'll have to clip what she calls herself, and then we'll know, right?
Anything could happen. The whole world might burn up. End of Ogra.
That's true.
There you go.
Because she does refer to herself
I think
as
she
third
calls herself
person.
Okra.
I think she does too.
Ogre!
That's Frank Oz, by the way, that plays her. He's doing the.
Seriously?
It's not his voice. The voice is Billy White.
Oh, okay.
The voice is Billy Whitelaw, but Frank Oz was the one that was animating her, which was a suit, right?
goodness.
Because it wasn't. She wasn't. I mean, is she both a puppet and because she walks around? It's like a suit,
Right.
right?
But then, of course, then she has her puppet moments whenever she sits.
Oh my
which is
God,
great.
I love when she sits. As a matter of fact, here's what she sounds like as she sits. It's one of my favorite.
She's great.
It's one of my
Oh my
favorites.
God.
Her character is fantastic. I get a kick out of her. And I think I appreciate her more now than I used to. As a matter of fact, something really weird in watching the movie this time, I don't know if it's because we just saw the series, babe, but I picture the world differently now. You know how when you watch something over and over again, you have this in your mind's eye, you have what the different places look like and where they fit in the world and everything. And then you watch it much later and it's like, oh, that, that set wasn't like I remembered it, or this seems like it's over here now, or yeah, it's weird. I had that kind of moment last night. It was like I was seeing the movie again for the first time.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, yeah, I didn't have the same visual cues that I had all these years from when I'd watched it. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but it was kind of weird.
Yeah.
It was kind of like an out-of-a-body thing I had going last night.
Right,
But
you're
you
like,
know-
wait, this isn't what I remember,
Yeah.
but it is.
But it is. It's the exact same, but it seems but the set seemed just a little different this time, and I thought, oh, that's weird.
It's funny, like
It's
you said,
proving
how
your
memories.
memories wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, babe.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah, what
It's
Court
proving
said.
them wrong. Yeah.
I don't get how I could have wrong memories. I have seen this movie so many times.
Right.
It's crazy.
See, and it could be because of the series that has messed with it, because then you're building the world around it. Because I remembered practically everything of this movie since as soon as we even started it.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
the only section I actually completely forgot about were those like cush ball plant creatures in that rocky desert zone.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Uh-huh.
That's the only scene I totally forgot.
Oh, see, and I love those. And then they all run away.
Yeah, they're like,
Yeah, they all go inside the caves. Oh, that whole scene. I just love that whole scene. It's so cool. I've made the same point in the Age of Resistance show. I just want a collection of all the little creatures that they pan across that are in the foreground and in the background doing little things like that. That's what I want. I want a room filled with all of those little things.
Yeah, the creatures that just play a bit part, which
Right.
really are, just there and gone, and to create the ambiance of the world.
Something slightly out of focus that eats something or is, all of those little things. I want one of each of them. I would have a huge room full of stuff because there are lots of those.
Probably.
That's
True.
the job I would want too. If I were on the puppetry team, those are the things I'd want to make, is stuff like that.
Yeah, you'd want to like create the little things,
Yeah,
the creatures,
right, exactly.
to make the world more of a world.
The original script for this, the draft script for this movie, was going to begin the movie with Jen and Kira traveling through the underworld.
Oh, really?
Where they come
Wow.
across a race of underground mining creatures. And so because they didn't use that concept in this movie, Jim Henson used that concept later on in Fraggle Rock.
Oh, and used again in the series that we'll talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now what were you going to say, Court?
Oh, I was going to say, speaking of creatures,
Mhm.
I hate podlings
Oh, do you hate them as
with
much as
a passion.
And
you
why?
hate-
So as a kid, and it's less now, I have to admit, as a kid, I have this problem with babies. I hate them. Hated. I don't hate them anymore as much, but I hated babies. I thought they were ugly. I couldn't understand why people were like always like, "Oh my god, they're so cute." And I'm like, "No, they're not. They're terrifying. They're freaky. In 10 years they're not." Like, I don't understand.
Well, it goes along
And
with
then
you.
they steal your stuff. They steal your stuff. They're
your
super
attention.
self-centered. I hate them.
Oh.
And so Podlings reminded me of them, and so I saw them as these selfish Cabbage Patch Kids potato people, and I'm just like, ugh.
They are potato people. They are definitely those little potato covered with pantyhose creations.
Yeah, the Cabbage Patch versus potato versus troll doll. Yeah, all together in one.
They look kind of like something you'd find in the bottom of a barrel of an old like an old children's toy section in an antique store.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
You're like searching through the antique stores of like the dollar bin of children's toys from forever, going all the way at the bottom. You find this freaky puppet.
It's like, what is this? Mm-hmm.
Hey,
It's like half rotten, and you're like, oh.
Hey, Courtney, are you laying down on a couch right now?
Well, no, but I am. So what I do have, you'll enjoy my setup. So in front of my computer, I do have a lounge chair.
Oh, well.
And my Victorian lounge chair, I kick back, and I usually have like a leg up on the armrest, and so technically it's a couch.
Do podlings feed you grapes during the show?
I mean, if I could suck their souls out, yeah, they would be.
See, that just goes with your T-shirt that I saw you wearing the other day. It said, "Babies, I think I'll buy a plant."
Right, exactly.
That's what your T-shirt said. I saw
I have
that.
this feeling of like, how about aloe? Stick some aloe on it.
It's more healing.
Jeez.
Put some aloe on that burn. See, but here's the thing. I do have to say, like, it's less. I still don't find babies cute, but I don't find them revolting.
Babies, they don't make me puke anymore.
Did you know?
Babies, ...
Okay, go ahead, say that again, babe.
Did you know that the original concept for the movie did not revolve around a crystal?
It didn't? Did it still revolve around Jen?
Because originally, I guess when the pre-production design work done by Brian Froud, he had Jim Henson baffled because he was perplexed. He was wondering, why in the world is this guy drawing crystal concepts? Because the name of the movie was originally going to be The Dark Chrysalis.
Oh, really? It was going,
and so he was wondering. So Jim Henson was wondering, what are these? Why are you drawing crystals? But then he became, he kind of liked the idea, so changed it from the Dark Chrysalis to the Dark Crystal.
Wouldn't that be hilarious as a director and the writer of everything when your production guy is just totally doing something different?
Yeah, he misunderstood, I guess, the name of the title and was drawing all these crystals. And
then
let's run with it.
So we get this movie because Froud doesn't know what a chrysalis is.
Misunderstood what he was asked to be draw.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, guess I'll draw crystals then.
That's what you want.
That's what you want.
So.
Fine.
So I did find on top of the concept art stuff, so there's concept art out there that were originally made for both of our Gelflings.
Mm-hmm.
And Jen's concept art looks so much better than his puppet.
Oh, yeah.
So much better. It looks so cool. He has like this blue face, and their facial features are much less ape-like and more elf.
Yeah.
And it's so cool.
The other one
and hers is the same, yeah.
Her being Kira, right, yeah.
Being Kira. Yep,
yeah.
Kira.
Who at this point in this movie are the last two of the Gelflings, I guess? Because the Skeksis thought they were all gone too.
Because they were trying to stop the prophecy, so they were like, let's kill them all and suck up their essence.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed something when I was capturing clips. I noticed it even more. When we're first introduced to the mystics, you have that sand art, you know, that whole scene. And the mystic, whichever one it was, I can't remember, he has that little ladle of sand, right? And it comes across the screen, and he dumps it into, he puts a little bit of the red or whatever it was in the middle of that white spot. But he kind of misses it, and it doesn't pour in the center. It kind of pours off to the side and then goes over the edge into the almost into the area in between the two.
Oops.
And I thought, and then they pan up because it's the person actually in costume doing it, and they probably couldn't see.
Right.
And it pans up, and they were doing it left, depending if they were lefty or righty. They were doing that in the left hand, and they had something else in the right. And I thought, I wonder how many times they had to film that and redo that sand art, take all that red out, and redo it again and again. And I bet they finally said, okay, close enough. Forget it. We can't do this anymore. You're going to drive me crazy.
Oh, my goodness.
So, yeah, I just noticed it for the first time this time. It was like, oops, not quite right. You did such a great job on all the rest of it. And the final touch is like, Buh. But then he does throw some sand on top of it. It was like, so anyway, that's what he had in his right hand. He had some sand in the right hand.
You guys are kind of like this trivia. Did you know?
Well, I kind of.
The Skeksis were originally based on the 7 deadly sins.
Oh, no.
But then they had to move away from that because, they ended up creating 9 of them. But yeah, the original thought was they were going to be based on the 7 deadly sins.
Oh, right. The 10th would have been the emperor who dies at the beginning.
I'm still the emperor. I am still emperor.
I'll put that here. Oh, it's so gross, man.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, the creepy part of this movie. That's the part that bothered Kevin. He didn't like that when he was a kid.
Turned to dust.
That's the thing. Speaking. This movie wasn't that popular with critics when it came out, and I think part of that is why. This is why. Creepy stuff like that. It's like, this is the Muppets creator? Ew, what is
I think, like
this?
you said, it was originally, Jim Henson was originally thinking that this was going to be a children's movie, but then the parents ended up saying, I'm not taking my children to this.
Right. Like, how about no?
Let's not do that.
Well, it's like, and there are things that I realized this time, knowing more about, like, just how things work and that I wouldn't have ever thought about as a kid. Like, whenever they banished Chamberlain, his design is, it's really cool. And I'm guessing they meant it. So on his back are spines that look like pin feathers.
Yeah. Right.
Right. Which is when a bird is getting fresh feathers. So it's almost like he was reborn or taken, back to when he was a baby.
Yeah, he definitely looked like a baby bird. Yeah.
Well, here's some trivia on that for you. So, Brian Froud, who was drawing
who doesn't know what a chrysalis is, by the way.
Right. So he based the characters, the mystics and the Skeksis off of a design of a troll from his 1977 book, The Land of Froud. So he was that's why he designed them to have 4 arms. So in the scheme, the Skeksis also have 4 arms, but you don't see them until exactly what you're talking about when they disrobe
they have these little
Chamberlain.
raptor arms.
Yep, and if you look closely, there's a tiny pair of chicken legs beneath Chamberlain's shoulder blades.
Yeah, there are. And as a matter of fact, they look like 2 little lumps of fat. And I thought, what is that? Or muscle. And that's what that is. Okay.
Yeah, so interesting.
They also kind of look like oh gosh, I don't remember his name, but it's the blue flying creature dude in Star Wars who is that dealer.
Oh, that's what it reminds you of, is him? Watto?
His design reminds me a lot of the Skeksis and vice versa. Yeah. They're just like weird bulbous fatty bellies.
Yeah, bird-like things. Yeah. Kind of these unfeathered birds.
Right. It's like, and another thing I realized with other than the pin feather stuff was whenever Ogra was talking about the giant planetarium that she has.
The orrery, yeah,
Orrery. So, orrery.
The orrery.
So she was saying that was a representation of the heavens and their worlds. And in my head, I'm like, my God, they better not spin that fast.
Everybody fly off.
If you guys are spinning that fast, oh my gosh.
Yeah, right. And everything's supposed to align, and that alignment would last about 1/8 of a second.
and she was saying it was funny in the scene where she was like, when the moons or when the suns align, and at that moment everything aligned, and I was just like, you mean like now?
I don't think it's
and
meant
then
to
like
be
2
real
seconds
time.
later I'm like, oh, how about then? Oh, how about another one?
Here's an interesting tidbit.
But she meant it. She meant it. She said that it was basically like a representation of how the heavens move.
Yeah.
And I'm just like,
Yeah, but then she didn't say it's moving in real time, though.
True, but it was implied.
Anyway, go ahead, babe.
I was going to say, to give everybody a little taste of what the culture of the world was in the year that this movie was released, it was actually banned in several Islamic countries because it was deemed sacrilegious, and yet in France and Japan, this was the highest grossing box office release.
That's because
That's so fun.
Yeah. Oh, no. I noticed something else in the I keep going back to the mystics area, but I noticed something else in there too. All right, there's that mystic, his Jen's master, who dies, which totally confuses Jen, of course. He has no idea what's going on in this whole movie. But anyway, when that mystic dies, right, he fades out, kind of like Yoda, and there's all his stuff, right? And then they have this ritual where they all, join hands in a circle, and they send his stuff to him.
Receive your belongings. Receive them serenely.
That's what's in there.
Yeah.
They say, we return your things. Why couldn't he have taken that with him when he left? Did he?
Right.
And why the heck does he need his... I mean, I feel bad. He still needs his crutch in the afterlife.
True.
They sent it to him. We give you your stuff. Hey. It's kind of like, hey, bro, you forgot your stuff. Here, I'll send it to you.
Right.
That was
or it's like, right.
That's what that
Oh
whole
my goodness.
ritual
Or it's
was for.
like-
That whole ritual was to send his stuff to him, and that cracks me up.
It's kind of like whenever Ogre is like, where is he? He's like, oh, he's dead. And she goes, could be anywhere.
Yeah, it could be anywhere then. Yeah, I love that.
Because she was actually kind of like, oh, dang it. He could be anywhere.
Oh, her lines are the best. I just love some of her lines.
Oh, yeah.
Another thing about the Mystics, they had a harp, or it was kind of like a harp and dulcimer kind of instrument that I thought was the coolest looking thing. It was, of course, made for the puppets, and so I highly doubt any of human could play it because you'd have to have 4 arms. But it was dang cool looking.
And those strings were strung pretty darn loosely too.
Right.
As he's plucking it. But yeah, and I was listening this time to the tone that it made, which I probably should put in here. Because, I thought, okay, so what does that sound like? And I was trying to isolate just that little part. And at first, it didn't sound like that kind of instrument, but then it did. It was like, okay, there it is. I hear it now. So, yeah.
The dulcimer kind of style instrument.
I love that part, like playing an instrument. I like just I don't want to say more human, but the more recognizable things that they do with the puppets. I'll give you an example. My favorite one in the whole darn movie is during the trial by stone, where you have the general and the chamberlain are against each other to see who's going to be the next emperor, right? Mm-hmm. And the first shot is the general. Chamberlain! And he smacks on the stone, right? And everyone's all impressed. And then they go to a shot of him, and he does that hand on the hip with his belly stuck out, and he turns to one side and nods, and the other way, and he nods like, yeah, look at me. And I just love that shot because it's so human. And they do a great
personable,
job. Oh, yeah, it's
just
great. Yeah, it gave
exactly.
him perfectly done to give him the personality that it's like, now that's some quality puppetry right there. They really know how to make characters. So that, and like when Ogre sits down, anything Ogre, I should say. I mean, it's great. I love it.
Gosh, yeah. They did a wonderful job.
Oh, man, I got to put it in right there. It was great, Court. The Skeksis woman just said something right there. Speaking of the orrery, that first reveal as Jen's coming through the caves, which is where he says Ogre is named 2 different ways. He comes up, and then the doorway from the cave into the orrery opens up, and that first reveal of all of that beautiful model spinning, and the music swells, which is fantastic, by the way. This is Trevor Jones did the music, and I love the main theme. And it plays right there. I just love that scene. It's one of the great scenes out of this movie, and one that I definitely remember from when I was a kid. I was like, oh, this is the coolest world ever. I just love that sort of stuff.
You're like, what?
Anyway, so yeah, that's Eric. One of Eric's geek out moments. Anyway,
and see, for me, like this time, I noticed something that I would have never noticed as a kid, and it kind of bothered me. Everyone's houses and buildings and castles and anything they live in are all built so thin.
Right? Yeah.
When they crash through the walls, or when walls crumble down, whether it was from anything, it's like an inch thick.
Yeah, pretty much.
They all live in eggshells.
Anything that Gartham break through the walls of, which are the warriors that the Skeksis send out.
Right. Or even like at the end, whenever the castle's crumbling, like everything's so thin.
It's like, no wonder. How did that not fall down in the first storm that came through?
Yeah.
Right. I'm like, you guys all live in eggshells.
And you have those so delicate, those designs, and then the Gothram, those creatures that you just referred to, Eric, their costumes were so heavy that the actors had to be suspended.
Oh, did they
While
really?
They were in costume, they had to be suspended so they could rest because those costumes were so heavy.
Oh, so they would lift him up every now and then so they'd get a rest. I was going to say I didn't see any lines. So.
No, they would have to lift them up every now and then, to give them a break, because they were so heavy.
They're probably
so you make these delicate housing designs in these
I just love the design of the Gartham, but you can see the feet of the person underneath walking.
You can, yeah. They're supposed to be only tentacles, but you can definitely
tell their feet.
There are a couple legs in there shuffling around too, but that's okay. That kind of thing never takes me out of the movie. It just makes me appreciate the puppetry and the costuming, I should say.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Just so many cool things. Oh, speaking of puppetry, though. Okay, you remember when I said that I wanted to be the one that made all the little creatures? What I really meant to say was I want to make Ogra's nipples.
Oh, my God. No.
This is the kind of
she
thing.
She has these saggy but pointy nipples.
God, that's the kind of thing that would never, ever in a billion years now be made. They would never do that with a puppet now. Mm-hmm. Certainly not in a PG film.
And here's your trivia on Augra's name.
On her nipples?
I was going to say, if it's not about the nipples, I don't want to know.
Oh, okay.
No, go ahead. No, I'm joking. Sorry. Go ahead.
Because I thought as you were talking about her, I scrolled down and found the information on her name.
Yes.
So Jim Henson's original name for Ogra was Habitaba, Habeeetabat.
But luckily, Froud didn't know what a chrysalis was, so he had to change it.
Yeah, so Froud was not happy with that name. So his first concept sketches made the character more ogre-like. So at first she was then renamed Ogra, but then Jim Henson didn't like that name. So then they ended up settling on the name Augra. So that's why you get the confused name, because she originally was Ogra, and then they settled on Augra. So you get people pronouncing the name both ways.
Yes. oh, I feel like I've been vindicated in some way. I had no idea. Oh, man, thank you for that.
So there you go.
It's one of the things that's always bothered me about this movie, and now it doesn't have to bother me anymore.
Yep, because even they...
Agra. Even they slipped up.
Yep, so the name is supposed to be Ogra. Yeah, but, I mean, Agra.
Agra. Yes. Okay, good. Right about this time in the movie, the mystics start walking. So keep that in mind, because at the end, we'll let you know when they get there.
That's true, because it's going to be a while.
Yeah, they start their way to the castle, and it takes them 55 more movie minutes about to reach the castle. They travel for an hour of this film. It's only them traveling because they walk so dang slow.
And they have to be based off of armadillos. I kept saying it throughout the film. Like, they have their like shelly backs and then those spiny tails, and they're all hunched over with the long noses. And I'm like, you've got to be.
Well, Jim Henson's direction to Froud was to make them crocodile creatures.
Oh.
Dang it.
Yeah, but he didn't. But there, once again, Froud did not.
He doesn't know what a crocodile looks like.
He didn't make...
He's like, how about armadillo?
Yeah.
Oh,
so, yeah.
Oh, you mean one of those water armadillos? Sure, I'll do that.
I mean, he kept the general like crocodile face structure. They just don't have teeth.
And then threw in bird and armadillo. Yeah, maybe that's where you get the armadillo look when you put crocodile with bird.
Like, I could see the crocodile more with the Skeksis.
Mm-hmm.
In the scene where Kira talks to all the animals and gets them all riled up in the castle, all I could think of was Dr. Dolittle. If I could talk to the animals.
Come on,
Quiet. It's a miracle. In a year from now, I guarantee, I'll be the marvel of the mammal. Hey, no more just a boring old MD.
Oh my gosh.
Because it was like, what? Just because she can speak to one or two things, that doesn't mean she can speak to all things, right? It's like, Kira, talk to all the animals. Oh, okay. And suddenly she knows all the languages. But did they establish that she could speak to everything? I don't know.
I guess so.
I don't know.
Like all animals anyway. But I do have to say that device, the soul-sucking life essence device.
Yeah.
I have like this like total 180 as like from when I was a kid to when I was a teen and stuff. So whenever I was like a kid and watching this, for one, wasn't allowed to watch it. And then as soon as I did see it, it was terrifying. Mm-hmm. And I hated that scene. And I would actually have to look away.
Yeah.
Teenager.
You had great parents.
Teenager, I loved that scene because I hated podlings.
And you wanted them to suck the essence out.
I did. And it was really satisfying.
I take it back. Who were your parents?
And it was so satisfying that I was just like, another.
Yes,
like, I wanted them to do it more.
Eat the babies.
Exactly. I was just like, it was, I don't know, there's something satisfying about like seeing like the bottle fill, and I'm like, oh yeah, like you could get a lot more, I don't know. I was into potions and stuff, so the fact it got into this little potion bottle, I got all excited over it.
I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I wrote down in my notes, this is the point in the movie where Courtney asked, can you drink your own essence and regain what you lost?
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a perfect question. What would happen? Could you
because it was Kira, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Was that her name, Kira?
Yeah,
yep,
Kira.
When she, whenever they were using the crystal on her, and she lost like a few years on her or so, because it did those few drops, and I do have to give them kudos. It got rid of the green in her hair. It made her face more sunken in.
Yeah, it did.
They did.
Yeah, she looked totally different through the end of the movie.
She lost some life. But can't you just drink it again? That was yours.
Exactly. You would think it would work perfectly because it's yours. Except you could,
Yeah,
there's
it was hard.
always that little bit at the bottom that you just can't quite get out.
or like in the straw going to the bottle, you'd have to suck the straw, be like,
Right. Is that just a few extra days or a month or two that you lose out of your life just because you can't get that damn little drop
just
in the
because you
bottom?
can't get that little drop. Like you lost your wedding day because you couldn't get that drop in the bottle.
See, yeah.
Oh, you also mentioned something about the crystal chamber when Jen, I should say, when the Gartham are chasing him and they knock a hole into the side of the crystal chamber and he goes inside of it. You mentioned something about Star Wars. What was that?
Yeah, so whenever he like flees into that orange crystally room that sits below, I think below the main crystal, right?
Yep. Yep.
I always mixed it up with Star Wars whenever like that chamber where Darth Vader was, like, oh, Luke, I am your father. And I was like, Luke was sitting there like, ah, and Darth was like, oh.
Okay, specifically Empire Strikes Back, when they're in the Cloud City and they're down in their final fight, when Luke loses his hand.
Yeah.
Right.
That
exactly.
whole area down underneath there. Mm-hmm.
I mixed it up so much as a kid that I actually like combined them. And whenever I would watch Star Wars, I would think that it looked more crystal-like. And whenever I would watch this portion, I expected like Darth Vader to be around the corner, like, ah. Like, so I literally mixed them all up.
I could see that because this movie did have a lot of I didn't write them all down, but it had a lot of, oh yeah, I could see this movie in that. It was almost like I think this movie came before, but like a lot of artists do, they borrowed some of the concepts from this movie and inserted them. It sure seems into other movies later on. Like you said, like Star Wars. Mm-hmm.
Right.
One of the most...
I don't know which one came first. I'm guessing Star Wars.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And like the Landstriders, Eric, you said that the Landstriders sure remind you of some thing that's used in another movie.
It's not that they remind me. I had actually heard, and it was fairly recently, that the Landstriders were a direct inspiration for something, and I can't remember what it was. Mm-hmm. And I'm almost positive it's monster movie-ish, like maybe even kaiju related. And I can't remember, so I'm gonna have to look it up. If I can find it,
the movie. What's the movie
computer will
with
tell us.
The big creature that crashes in the Bay of New York City, and that's a big, tall creature with long legs.
Cloverfield. You mean
Yes.
Cloverfield?
Yes, I'm talking.
He looks nothing like. Well,
okay.
Clover, the front legs kind of have that similar look.
Front legs
think...
Was he a quad? Was he a quad creature?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Oh, he was. Okay.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
But no, not
had
that.
Kind of like a
those
lizard
front
face.
legs. I could definitely see those front legs being. Now that you say that, he does kind of have that similar look.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of which, I just stumbled into it. The Chamberlain's voice, that thing that he does. That's one of the things you remember most from this movie, right? I think I think everyone who thinks of the Dark Crystal thinks from the Chamberlain. But yet he doesn't do it as often as I remember. I remember it just being annoying that he just did it every time you saw him. But he doesn't.
He kind of does.
Well, it doesn't.
See, but in my, because I noticed that he did.
Yeah, he does quite a bit. But I considered it like I guess I just remember the Skeksis saying so much more than they do. That's really what it is.
Just being like jabber, 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 jabber.
Yeah, right. And again, that may be based on the series because they do that. I mean, they say a lot more in the series. Oh, and one thing, thinking of the series made me think of the big feast scene in this movie. God, I love that feast scene.
It looked so tasty as a kid.
Oh, and those little pointy, forky things that they use to point things. Are those bones? Are those what are those things? I don't.
No, it was just it's a fork on the end of their. It's actually metal, and it's like a little cap onto their fingers.
Oh, it was on the
And
fingers.
they use them
Okay,
like
that's
little.
what it was. With long little ones.
Right,
That
kind
does
of like
make sense.
it's kind of like the forks you use for escargot.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go.
Yep.
There you go. Exactly like that. But I
Yeah,
just thought
it's a snail twirler.
that whole scene had to have been so much fun to do. And then as soon as I said that, I thought, no, it was probably such a pain that they hated it by the time they were done. But
Right, because they had to probably do it so many times.
but it's so iconic that they repeat that several times in the series that we just watched. Because there are at least 2 or 3
Right.
other feast scenes in that series, and that's why, because it's so cool.
Oh my gosh. And like all of I don't know, they're just so dang messy, and all the noises are like, oh, it's terrible. It's terrible yet tasty.
Yeah, I need to drop some of those in here because they're classic. Yeah.
Like if they get stuff caught in their teeth, they're like,
Oh, when they pick at it, yeah. Ugh, so gross. They're so disgusting, man.
they really are. And speaking of disgusting and Landstriders, it was a funny childhood memory. I remember, and I still think the Landstriders are dang ugly.
Yeah,
and
they are kind of
as
ugly.
a kid, I thought they were dang ugly, and Amber thought they were so cute. And when we were kids, Aaron would be like, "Oh, they're so cute," and here I'm like, "Ugh."
I think if they didn't have
just like,
those,
no.
if they didn't have those freakishly long and legs that can't bend, that have no knee in the middle of them, it's so strange. Like stilt
It was
walkers.
never that.
Oh, it was for me.
It was never their legs or anything. So for me, it wasn't that because it kind of reminded me of grasshoppers and stuff.
Yeah.
It was never the legs. It was always the fact that they were like hairless cats. So they were all skin and flesh, except they had little puffs of hair. So it's like the balding cats. And then their face looked like a mixture of a grasshopper and a walrus.
Yeah, I could see that.
And I wasn't too fond of that.
I just like how on the tops of their legs, that big long front leg, it looks like another big ear at the top of them.
Yeah.
On the top of it. I was like, they have
they have like those really long ear things.
They have a set of ears on their legs. That's what it looks
Yeah,
like.
like these little wingy things.
Again, wildly creative though. All the designs for these things. I guess if you're making puppets of stuff, you just go crazy, right? You just whatever you can draw.
Might as
Yeah,
well.
sure, we can make
Oh.
that. Right, we can make that. Why not? So that's really
Another
cool.
thing that bothered me, though, as we're on that kind of design aspect, whenever Kira jumps off the cliff and starts flying, and it's like, whoa, what? You have wings? What? At the end, when they drop down, he goes, well, why don't I have wings? She goes, that's because you're a boy. How does she know?
Well, how
does she know that all girls have wings? She never grew up with other gelflings.
Did she not though? Because she was a kid. Well, she was pretty darn young.
She was
At
a
least
child
in
and
those
saw her right.
flashbacks. In those flashbacks, when they touch, they have this mental connection where they.
Mm-hmm. And her mom shoved her in a tree, and then was taken away.
Right. So she was aware of all of that. So she was probably old enough to be able to know that. I don't know.
So is she automatically older than Jen? Because Jen doesn't remember a thing.
Babe, we have established that Jen doesn't know much of anything, right?
True. But all he remembered was being like adopted or so.
Shard? What's a shard? I don't understand what a shard is. What do I do with this?
What am I doing here?
Maybe he has amnesia.
That's what I thought. I was thinking that when he would see the shard, what do I do with this? It's like, well, it's about the size of your ear. Stick it in your ear. You know, I don't know.
Right. I don't know. What do you do with that?
What is it? Okay. Okay, back to the orrery.
Mm-hmm.
When he has to choose the shard, he's asking for a shard, and Ogre comes over and she dumps a bunch of shards and said, fine, choose one. He's like, but which one is it?
Which one is it?
And then they do this dissolve thing. They go, and then they come back down where it's later, I guess. And he has 3 shards in front of him. And he says, I know it's one of these 3. How the hell does he know it's one of those 3?
You know.
And they all look almost exactly alike. How did he know that that's what it was? And then he has to get a clue, by making one glow. But anyway.
It would have been really funny if he picked out the 3. He's like, it's got to be one of these 3. And then he plays the note and it's like behind him. And he's like, God dang it.
It's glowing over his shoulder. And he's like, well. And he just takes the 3 in front of him and takes them all with him.
Right. He's like, well, I guess it's none. Well, I guess that didn't work.
And that was the other thing, too. I thought, well, just take them all. Just put them in your bag, and when you get to the crystal, just try one. Keep trying them until one works. There you go. That's the one.
Right. It's like a key.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Take the whole key ring with you. Just hang it on your belt. Anyway.
Exactly.
Do you have any other trivia?
And I like how Ogre has this. I was gonna say I like how Ogre has this chest of crystals, and she's like, it's one of these.
It's like, which one? Don't know. She says.
It's like, are you sure it's even in there? Like,
I just like how she repeatedly points out just how little he knows. It's like, don't you know already, stupid gelfling?
Right.
No wonder there's only 2 of you left, man. Actually, she didn't even know Kira existed at that point. She's like, you're the last one, and I'm not surprised. What am I doing here? I don't understand. Anyway.
I was just wondering, do you think the reason why this movie, because a lot of people found this movie when they saw it as children terrifying?
Yeah.
And do you think it's because the puppets were so real looking?
It could be. I mean, they are just so kind of weird looking is really what it is.
I think it's more their design rather than them looking human. I don't think it's an uncanny valley thing.
Okay.
No, I don't think that's it either. Because none of them look really human. They're just, it's just the oddness of the design and the odd tone of the whole film. It's just different. It's just very different.
Right. It's not what it. Yeah, it's different. Like, as a kid, it was a heck of a lot more scary than as it is now. Like, as a kid, it was disturbing, I guess. Well, as I described the podlings, it was kind of like you went into the back of a antique store and saw these puppets, and they had like this entire world, and you're like, oh, I don't know about this.
You can definitely tell. This is definitely the precursor to Labyrinth. You can definitely see when you watch Labyrinth, you say, oh yeah, half those things could have been in the Dark Crystal.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. So, same company, just later. Mm-hmm. And at that time, it didn't bother us as much. Labyrinth, everybody loves Labyrinth.
It's probably because it also has humans in it.
Yeah, maybe so. But I think, I posit that there wouldn't be a Labyrinth if there wasn't a Dark Crystal first.
I bet. Yeah, I bet.
Interesting. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably, yeah. And I bet the birds in the Labyrinth were kind of based off of those little bushes that ran off in the Dark Crystal. They have the same exact colors.
Yeah, they did.
They have the same exact fluffy nature, and they all jump around.
Of course, that could just be because that's the kind of stuff that Henson Productions comes up with. They just do.
True.
That's their style. Kind of like the Aardman style, true. Like the Wallace and Gromit. All of his productions kind of had that same look, whether they were Wallace or Gromit or not.
Right. Very true.
Yeah. Look at Chicken Run. Compare Chicken Run and Gromit. It's like,
Which I always mixed up together.
Of course you did.
I mix things that are like similar, and then all of a sudden they're this one mixed thing, and then it's confusing.
Yeah. So do you have other trivia, babe?
Well, I was just trying to figure out, I was reading a little bit on the mystics and trying to figure out what Froud, what his concept with them are, and even he didn't know. So they were kind of
I'm starting to think that maybe he was the inspiration for Jen.
Well, the Jen, now, the little bit of trivia on Jen and Courtney's reference to the concept art, Jen was originally going to be blue because he was originally meant to be playing homage to the Hindu deity Rama.
Oh, really?
But then, out of being afraid of being offensive, they changed that. But it still was offensive to the. So it's So that.
So.
But his idea of the mystics is he wanted to try and convey the idea that they were purged of all materialistic urges and that they were incapable of acting in the real world.
Yeah. I just saw them as
concept.
I just saw them as all Buddhists. They were the Buddhist monks.
They're incapable of material. What was that material?
Incapable of acting in the real world. That they were going to be.
What was the other one? It was something about materials.
Purged of all materialistic urges.
Then why do they send them their items?
Yeah, see, exactly.
See, I was totally confused by that scene this time. It's the first time I paid any attention to it.
Don't have the
I just saw it in the past. All the other times I've seen the movie, I only saw it as just ritual. And it wasn't until this time I thought, wait, they just teleported his crap to him. That's all they were doing.
Right.
And
funny.
just the whole
if they have no materialistic urges, then why do they need their stuff?
See,
because
and
they still don't like
design.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Just the whole design of the mystics was extremely difficult because of the way, for example, the actors that donned those costumes, they had to walk on their haunches, hunched.
Right, yeah.
And with their right arm extended forward.
Yep.
Jim Henson himself, he said, could only hold the position of a mystic in costume for only 5 to 10 seconds.
Oh, see, and that's all I thought as they walk around, because you can see them walking bent with their knees way up in the air.
Yeah,
it's just like with their butts almost dragging on the ground and just shuffling forward. And I thought, I thought the same thing. I thought, those actors, that's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No kidding.
One of my favorite characters in this movie was Kira's dog.
Fizzgig.
Referred to as a puppy puff. Fizzgig,
yeah. Yeah, Fizzgig's
that was one of Amber's favorites too.
All mouth.
Oh, all right, come on.
Yeah,
all mouth. I described them as two slippers. Two fuzzy slippers stuck together at the end with a tail.
That's a good. Yeah, that's exactly what it looks like. Yeah. I love it. I mean,
with my balls.
It's obviously, hands coming up from below the floor that's doing it.
Right.
But anytime his little feet are moving around, it just cracks me up.
So this is supposed to be a kid's movie, was the whole first intent of it. And
yeah, right.
But yet at the end of the movie, they stab Fizzgig, throw him into they throw Fizzgig into a fire and stab Kira.
Stab Kira.
Yeah, they do.
It was like, what? What is that?
And you remembered, didn't you remember Fizzgig dying, Courtney? You thought when they chucked him into the pit?
I remember Fizzgig dying.
Yeah. No.
But here's the thing. As a kid, it could be that I remembered him dying because that was around the time when I fell asleep.
Oh, yeah, you did mention that when the music hit a certain point.
There was about a point in time that the movie that I would always fall asleep because I remember never really finishing the movie all the time because I never remembered the ending too well.
And is it because it was like, okay, tilt too much and you just had to shut down because this is,
No.
It
was so
traumatic
to you that you
had to shut down.
It was the opposite and it got boring.
Okay.
That's when you passed out from fear.
Not from
it was
fear,
about
but
the time the got was about the time that boring.
Oh my God. Okay. I have just used her voice so many times in a row. It's not even funny. I love it. Thank you, Courtney. You made my day.
Oh my gosh.
Repeat what you just said, please.
Oh, I said about the time when the elf got to the castle is when I found it boring as a kid.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's like, okay, time to go to sleep.
I'm actually curious. I wonder what was so offensive about this movie that they had to ban it in other countries.
Why the Islamic countries found it
the mysticism.
Right, Right. Like, is it because of like I'm curious what the more like Islamic religion has that would be offended by this.
I don't know.
I'm just curious if there's like this one thing that's like, I don't know, be like
Naked Gem.
Right,
Naked Gen is
something-
what it's
something
that's
like-
what finally put them over the top. It's like, nope, sorry. That was Jim Henson, by the way. He puppeteered. He was the puppeteer behind Jen. Wow. That was the man himself ran Jen. But his voice was Stephen Garlick is his last name of all things.
Garlic.
Yeah. And Kira was puppeted by Catherine Mullen, who was a staple on The Muppet Show and different things like that. She was one of their main puppeteers. And her voice was Lisa Maxwell. So, yeah. Yep.
Very cool.
Let's see here. The Chamberlain voice was Barry Denon. I mention him just because the Chamberlain has such a distinctive voice, which doesn't,
oh my gosh, yeah,
which doesn't have the same accent that they give him in the series. He has an accent that is really pronounced in the series, and I wonder why that's different.
I'll have to.
I don't know.
Well, it says here, why was it banned in Islamic countries? And it says several of the countries felt that too much of the film resembled their modern religious culture and could not be allowed.
See, that's what I was wondering. I wonder what about the religion it resembled.
I wonder if maybe it is the Skeksis around the stone, around the crystal. That
maybe?
Part
Just said
maybe that is reminiscent to them of Mecca.
Yeah, they said too much of the film, too much. So many parts of this film was too close to their modern religious culture at that time.
I bet that's it. That's got to be it. The way that go
Gather
around the
it
rocket
and they,
in Mecca. I don't know.
Perhaps it's also the way the mystics are on a pilgrimage to the tower.
That's interesting, though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm glad we know a little bit more about it anyway.
Yeah, a little bit. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
That's it. That's all I have. Except the crystal of truth, I say at the end. Dun, dun, dun. Makes everything better. And you said the castle looked different than you remembered, Court, at the end?
Well, as you take a grain of salt, I only saw the end maybe 3 times compared to the 30 I've watched it.
Oh, that's true. You were passed out from fear.
From total fear. Yeah, totally fear. But I didn't realize that the castle turns into like this iron white crystal look. Mm-hmm. It's really pretty.
Yeah. Turns into Crystal Castle. Yep, it
very
does. It is very pretty. Well, it only had that little chocolate shell over the outside that just broke. It was so brittle and thin, it just fell right off. Oh, there you go. It's crystal. That's cool.
I do like the concept of, I don't know why this crystal was the 2 halves of a race, but it kind of, it was kind of cool that the Skeksis and the Mystics were technically one race, but they were split.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, split when the crystal was
and
cracked.
So it was good and evil. It was pretty much good and evil split, and then you need to have both to have balance.
Right. Like I say, this is very much a Zen thing. You got a whole Buddhist thing
they
going
didn't
on
want
here.
to banish the Skeksis. They didn't want to get rid of them. They wanted to become one with them.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Exactly.
It was kind of like they needed the Skeksis in order to be.
Yeah, and I guess if you think of it that way, it's like, oh, no, we don't want them to die. And you think, yeah, that's just because you die too when they do.
Yeah.
Right.
No,
right.
They're better than that. The Mystics are better than that. Here's what I want to know. Okay, they join up, right? And they talk, blah, blah, blah. That's who we are. And now we're going to take off.
After poor Joe went missing, and they're like, eh.
After what?
Oh, the guy I called Joe whenever one of the Skeksis died, and then they looked back like, oh, there goes another.
There goes another. I did like how when they joined, before I say what I was going to, I do like when they're joining, the Skeksis that lined up with them, the other half of them, just happened to be standing in front of them. All of them. Every single one of them in the line was all in the right spot for them to rejoin. What if they rejoined with someone else, and then you just And as they're starting to merge, two of them suddenly just change places. Oh, no. This one's over
here. No.
Oh, you've got get mine over here.
You got my Skeksis.
You got a Skeksis in my Mystic. You got your Mystic in my Skeksis. You
got your Mystic in my Skeksis.
Two great tastes that taste great together. But anyway, at the end, when they combine and then they go off in the, through the top of the castle and away, they're gone. All I thought was, who's in charge now?
Right.
Who stays in the castle? Do they just leave it? It's a cool crystal castle now. Who lives there? Is that where Jen and Kira?
Is it going to maybe become the new Gelfling Empire, maybe?
I have no idea, because that's it. They just pan out and they show us the Crystal Castle and run credits. So what happens now?
Mm-hmm.
I think we need another series.
That's
Gelflings
true.
and Podlings intermingle, and then the world makes peace.
I know that was some of the trivia was that people did push for Jim Henson to do a sequel, and he really said no. He was adamant that there was not going to be a sequel. So, of course, then now we've got a prequel.
Right.
A prequel. And what is really interesting about the prequel is that Ryan Froud, the designer, the concept designer of this, met his wife on the set of this movie. She was a puppet designer. And what is really interesting is their son does the design work for this prequel.
He also played the baby brother in Labyrinth.
That's currently playing on Netflix.
Aw.
That's awesome.
I noticed it. I noticed some crossover names between the two productions as well. Some of those probably, some of the younger ones from that production are working on the new one too. So yeah, that's neat.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And someone figured out how to make a chrysalis, babe, because there are some in the new movie. New show.
Sweet.
So took that original concept and put it into the prequel, and that is all we will say, because if you haven't seen it, you need to watch it.
So
I
haven't seen it.
The son of Froud knows what one looks like. Why couldn't his dad?
He probably knows now. He's probably like, gosh dang it. It's probably his family inside joke. Like, hey, Dad, look, I made a chrysalis.
I just like how we have this whole mythology where he doesn't know what a chrysalis is.
Did you know?
No.
A little bit of trivia on the Skeksis. It took 6 people to work the animatronics of a Skeksis creature.
I believe it. They're big. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's...
Two people were stuffed into the costume.
Yeah.
And then 4 people worked the platform underneath.
Wow. So it took 2 of them to move it, and then everybody else to do all the weird things.
Yeah, the arm. Yeah, everything else.
I can't even imagine.
That's crazy.
Puppetry's got... seriously, we think it's wonderful. I bet it's such a slog. Oh, good Lord. We appreciate it, though. Thank you for doing it.
Yeah, fascinating.
It's kind of like the inner workings of every parade float. Like, you see that guy in that zone where he's like crushed in there with all these little devices. And
right, exactly.
I bet that's exactly what puppeteering's like.
Yeah.
Who's literally like so smashed in there.
Okay, so final thoughts?
Still one of my faves.
Yeah, it's a classic.
I love this movie.
And go ahead and stay to the end. Don't pass out from fright.
Yeah, try not to fall asleep due to fright.
Yeah. Just stay till the end. You will be glad that you did.
If you stay to the end, the dog lives.
Yeah, right. Fizzgig lives. Right.
That's so funny.
But if you don't, he dies. So stay to the end.
That's your other T-shirt. If you stay to the end, the dog lives.
The dog lives.
Oh, I should share Kevin's one thought, that not just the one, but the one that I remember him saying is that rewatching the movie, he's like, I don't remember Jen's face being so fuzzy. Because that's one thing that I said, well, you'll love the series then, because not only are they not fuzzy, they give them pores on their faces. You can see the individual pores on the faces. So that's how advanced we are with puppetry right now. So
that's crazy.
Yes.
I can't wait.
Yes, it is crazy. So,
and as you watch the prequel that's currently playing on Netflix, is pay attention to their eyes. You were fascinated by
I
the fact
was.
that
I don't know if it's a physical effect or if they added it digitally, but yeah, their pupils dilate. Mm-hmm. Yep.
So watch for that too.
Watch
So
for that.
cool.
And thumbs up for me too. This is definitely one. Like I say, I think I saw it a couple times at the theater when I was 14 at the time. Maybe is what I was in that. But yeah, thumbs up for me. Speaking of the feast scene with the Skeksis and all that yummy stuff that they had, we have something far more yummy than that Courtney shared with us not too long ago that I have not had and I haven't had a chance to add the audio, so we have a Cavebabble Eats segment for you featuring Courtney
And mate.
Mate.
It's a little less lively than the creatures in the feast.
Oh, I don't know about that, but it has a lot of ritual involved in it. So
yeah.
True.
And now you will know how to properly create it and drink it.
Sort of, if I said it correctly.
Well, that's okay. It's new to us, and well, not so new to Courtney. She's the one that got into it.
If it piques your curiosity, you can always look it up and find a video on it to see what we're talking about.
Yeah,
definitely. It's Argentinian.
Cavebabble Eats Cultured Things.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has active
Because it's not
culture.
odd. It's like very popular.
Trendy right now.
Well, in South America.
And health food.
So has it become, I mean, is it a thing here in the United States?
No, not at all.
Okay.
They have canned ones and they have tea bags now.
But I have no idea even where to buy them here.
Health food.
Health, like
places.
Natural grocers or so.
Okay. Say hi.
All right, how do you do this?
All right, so I'm going to prepare it. And so I cannot remember the name for the one who prepares it versus the one who drinks it. But there are names for it, so I apologize.
We were calling her the mate hate.
So I'll just call myself the bartender, even though that's not quite right.
Yeah.
Or the server. I'll say the server.
Exactly.
So server prepares it, and then the server takes the first drink, because the first drink is known as the most bitter drink. So the server who prepares it has to take the most bitter so that it's more palatable for the ones who he's serving it to, or she serving it to.
That's the same for poison, by the way.
So I have to do that, and then what I do is I pass to the first person, they drink the whole amount, pass it back to me, I fill it up, pass to the next person.
Do
okay?
we backwash?
I don't.
You suck in and push out, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So you know about this.
So you take a sip and then you blow bubbles?
Oh yeah, totally.
No.
So yeah, I'm gonna.
Can you use that or what's in your baggie?
No. I'll do that because I want it to be the
the full
strong. Yeah.
Okay, the full experience.
So what? I just put it down.
So we're just going to be tasting individually
That's
and each get individual reactions.
Yeah.
I don't know what this has.
Oh yeah, it's got a whole. You have to
ceremony.
have it on the top. You have to have part of it that's dry, part of it that's
I'll go
wet.
over that. Yeah. So you fill it about halfway,
Would it be?
You have
and
plenty.
Oh, that's tea.
Oh
That's more than
no!
halfway, isn't it?
No!
and then
Stop it, T.
you have to prepare your yerba by cupping.
You got to cup your yerba.
You have to cup the gourd at the bottom,
Yeah.
and then create the pressure on the top so that there's no air.
Cupping ball motion. Okay.
And then invert it and shake.
Oh, okay.
Because that gets all of the dust particles towards the bottom.
And then you come off on your hand.
And then you have to tilt it so that you create what's called the mountain of mate.
Yeah.
Oh, I have to ask.
So then you know you did it right when you have like a little circle on your hand.
Dust on your hand.
And then you put that on your forehead,
And-
right?
Which I don't know what to do with
Then
it.
you
So I
put
just,
that on your forehead, right?
Do you
You
need
just got it.
Nice.
so I got my mountain of mate here.
Yeah.
And so then you take what's called your dummy water.
Dummy. Stupid water.
And as the guy says, it doesn't make you a dummy. It's just, anyway. So
Have you heard about that?
you start to tilt it back. And so where the mountain meets the bottom is called, oh gosh, your water hole.
Okay.
It's where the mountains, so that you pour
We have
into
one of
what you
those.
call the water hole.
Okay. So how much water,
We do.
gummy water, do you pour into there?
You pour in almost to the top of the mountain of mate, but
Also
not
known
quite.
as
Okay.
stupid agua. Agua, I should say. Stupid agua.
And then you kind of just let it sit. And the gentleman who I was watching compared it to what he says was blooming coffee, which I've never done. But you add room temperature water, which apparently seals in the flavors.
Oh.
I'm not certain how true that is, but that's what they do.
Okay.
So you bloom it just like you do coffee, which
Or
I've never
yeast.
done.
Okay.
So what you do is you take your bombija, which is the straw, the silver straw,
I was told not to touch that or you'd go blind.
and the bombija is curved, and so is the mate or the gourd. So you follow the curvature of the gourd with the bombija towards, you scrape the edge,
Okay.
and you go right directly where you poured, so
Okay.
the water hole. So then we just go shoop, and then you lift it, which should lift everything. Just a little bit.
Okay, and then that's where you put the...
You lift
Okay.
it just a little.
Okay.
And so that settles all the water around it so that it's...
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we take our mate water, which is just below boiling. So you want the water to be where it first begins to bubble, just the little bubbles, and then you're good. You don't want it actually boiling.
Okay.
And so you pour that directly into that little mate hole.
And you avoid the...
You avoid your mountain of
mountainside.
mate, and when you pour it, it should make these little bubbles around the bombija. You have your three parts. You have your dry mountain of mate, your pretty much wet and ready mate, which is the valley, and then I cannot remember what they call the part that's the most liquid in all of the bubbles. There's another word for that, but it's the three part, and it's called the mate ecosystem. And so now it's ready, so I gotta take that first.
And that's when you know it's...
Now you take a hit of this.
And each person drinks the full amount.
Okay.
So, and it's about just like an ounce of water. What's that? So much better than last time.
Better than last night?
Yes. I made it so strong last night.
All right.
Okay, so then now you're pouring another ounce of water into there for the next person?
All right. It's the first time. Oh,
We
and there's
need
your
to-
bubbles.
Yep, and there's the bubbles, which apparently means that it's just healthy.
Here we go. Mate did not like it.
Going back to the server.
That's very bitter.
Okay, so what's your experience, Mr. Lion?
Bitter, strong. Aftertaste, it leaves a little of that bitterness on your tongue. Very tea-like. It's like a green tea. It's like a super strong green tea. I'm not getting much other than that. It's like super strong green tea with bitterness on your
Kind of like
tongue
lipstick.
and the roof of your mouth. Now, its aftertaste is a little more pleasant. It has an herby, of course, because it's like an herb. It tastes like green tea.
So you drink until... So you can obviously tell when you've drank it all?
Yeah, because
you get little
you start
bubbles.
to suck air.
Yeah.
You start to... Okay, so what was
suck
your
air.
experience?
It tastes like green
Mrs.
tea.
Hall. Yeah.
It tastes
Tastes
very
like
much like
green
green
Like really
tea.
Did you
strong
think
green
it
tea.
was bitter or...
It tastes like loose green tea. If you ever have loose green tea, like whenever you just
Yeah,
put it in
like
the
when you
thing,
brew it in a coffee maker or something.
and you occasionally get a couple little flakies. but
Okay,
it's
so you get some of the loose
just
tea through
barely.
the... Do you cup it in your hand?
I mean, it really doesn't. I don't think how you drink it matters. I could be
It's
wrong.
really cool.
Looks like a cup full of pop.
It really does.
That's why I'm saying it's like an herb experience.
And I don't have to lift up on the straw. It's already lifted.
Now you hold it.
But I see what you mean. I had to do 2 sips. Oh, my still. It's like it's
No,
making
you're
my
not
eyes
supposed to
water. Well, it's not as bitter as so maybe as it's going around, it gets less and less bitter.
Yeah, it does.
It's making my eyes water.
It wasn't overwhelming bitter or anything. It just tastes like green tea. It tastes like a very, very strong green tea.
But I'm tasting a smoky.
Like a nuttiness.
Smokiness to a smoky.
Kevin, start.
To me, it doesn't taste tea-ish. It tastes more smoky.
No, it definitely tastes like green tea.
So what do you think? Did you think it was bitter? What's your...
The initial, and then it settled very quickly, and then the green tea flavor just kind of took over.
I just like the aftertaste, and it coats your mouth a little bit with like almost a mentholy.
It's woody, kind of woody. And
Yeah, that's
There's
what
that
I'm getting,
menthol,
is
not
that-
tingle, but it's like you just finished a cough drop like an hour ago.
So people who do use this, is it just because they enjoy the drink, or is there actually a benefit to your health?
It's supposed to be.
They swear upon health benefits and an entire almost continent of people who drink it. So it's got to be something.
Mellow you out, or is it supposed to?
It gives you energy. It's basically a replacement for coffee.
Okay.
And so.
That's
What
so
is he-
sweet.
What you got there, Kai?
That's Kai's is
He has a camera that he records things with.
Yeah. So he's telling us what his opinion of.
Just pause it. That'll
Thank
work.
you, sweetheart. That was very good.
But yeah, so it has just about a little bit less caffeine than a cup of black coffee. It's pretty comparable.
So this cup of tea that you did, how long? So now will you sip
It should
on this
last you all day.
Yes,
Yeah,
you sip on it all day.
One should. I mean, it really depends on how much you drink. If you're like an avid drinker, you'll go through maybe 2 or 3. If you just sip on it, you'll go through 1.
And you sip on it until you
you don't feel like, until it tastes like just regular tea.
Okay.
Then it's kind of just what they call, the leaves have become tasteless.
So is this the only type of tea for this, or are there, like coffees? Coffees have very different.
Oh no, they have a million different types of yerba.
They have
out there.
ones with like orange peel in it and things like that. There are all kinds.
Like the ones I'm always recommended are Mission, or from Mission.
Okay.
The one I have is, I'm going to butcher it, but it's Cruz de Malta. It says it's a traditional yerba mate, which is kind of what I was going for. I was searching around to find a traditional one.
Start there and then
before going into the crazy flavors and things.
Yeah.
Because I wanted the full experience.
Reminded me.
I know.
of
I've let
something.
it sit so Amber can try it.
I reminded that something.
Don't drink the whole thing because it is going to be powerful.
Yeah.
I know what it reminds me of. It reminds me of that one blend we got of the green tea that had the
the brown rice.
Brown rice in it. That's what it tastes like.
With the brown
It's like the
rice
brown
in it.
rice tea that we did. The green tea with brown rice.
Brown rice in it. Yeah. Boy,
That's,
that was a long
that's
time.
what it reminds me of.
Yeah.
But yeah, don't drink the whole thing. 'cause
The
it'll be-
aftertaste is very much like that.
Palpitations. Huh?
78 milligrams per ounce, while coffee has 85 milligrams of ounce caffeine. Slightly less.
I think it's really tasty and I like it.
Well, thank you. Thank you for introducing that to us.
But when the yerba becomes tasteless, that's why you have your mountain of mate that was, well, it's supposed to be still dry. It's definitely not right now. I didn't make it quite right. But when it becomes tasteless, you use your bombilla and you flip them out into the other side. So you just scoop it and you go.
So you move your.
No, you're just literally behind it and go. You pop it over to the other side, and then that becomes your new water hole, and then you fill it that way, because then it's the other side that's untouched that you then fill.
Cool.
Until it becomes tasteless, and then you throw it out.
Well, thank you. Thank you for introducing that to us. Oh, what's that? I imagine that's to clean the straw.
Yeah, that's to clean the straws.
What's that? It is a
What
pipe
is that?
cleaner.
Why, that is a pipe cleaner.
What is that? Kevin, what do you have?
That is what we call a pipe cleaner.
Alright. It's a pipe cleaner.
Cavebabble says goodbye.
Wasn't that tasty?
Oh, yeah.
Yum, yum,
I
yum,
hope they
yum,
enjoyed
yum.
So bitter, so tasty.
Really, it is super strong. But
It is.
I
It's
didn't
a really
mind it though.
strong tea.
Does
And do you still indulge in it every now and then?
I do. I do. Yep. I still have it over here. I still have my bombilla. I still have to figure out a way to clean them out. I do have my little straw cleaner brush. But
Well, thanks for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
no problem.
If you would like to share your thoughts on this movie, we would love to hear them. Go ahead, write cavebabble@gmail.com or head over to cavebabble.com and see a list of our shows and what's coming up and all of that. Or you may join our Facebook group. Go to Facebook, search for Cavebabble Podcast, and ask to join the group, and we will accept you because we're very accepting people.
Yeah.
You may also subscribe on iTunes. Search for Cavebabble Podcast and subscribe. We would love for you to do that. And if you listen to the show and you like what you hear, or even if you don't like what you hear, we would appreciate you giving us a review on iTunes. Every little review helps. Ding! Thank you very much.
Ding.
And that's about it. Courtney, it's so cool to have you here. We want you here all the time.
Thank you for joining us.
Definitely. I couldn't pass this guy up.
All right, everyone. Thanks for all the downloads and listens. And until next time, I won't say week, next time, we're out of here.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Cavebabble.
The Great Conjunction is the end of the world! Oh, the beginning? Gelfling knows nothing.
Podcasting's choice. From coast to coast, continent to continent, right here 24/7.